Hello, hello, hello. This is Gresh from the I Am CEO podcast, and I have a very special guest on my show today. I have Kasey Jones of A Better Jones in our galaxy. Kasey, it's awesome to have you on the show.
It's fabulous to be here. Thanks, Gresh.
No problem. Super excited to have you on. And before we jumped in, I want to read a little bit more about Kasey so you can hear about all the awesome things that she's doing. And Kasey is a startup growth strategist, community builder, event organizer, and people connector. She is the founder of A Better Jones, a startup growth strategy firm, and Our Galaxy, a community to help business professionals become industry thought leaders. She is also the host of two podcasts, The Other Side of Sales, and her latest project, Thought Leader Camp. Kasey, are you ready to speak to the IMCO community?
I am.
Awesome. Let's do it. So to kick everything off, I wanted to kind of rewind the clock a little bit. Could you take us through what I call your CEO story? We'll let you get started with the business.
Absolutely. So I had been head of marketing for a couple different startups after starting my career in sales and then transitioning to marketing. And then I was working at a startup and I found out that they ran out of money. And I found out they ran out of money right after I'd gotten back from 10 days in Beirut, Lebanon, coaching social impact startups that were part of the first partnership between a startup accelerator and the UN. And so I was like on a high because it was such a rewarding experience. And I was like, oh my God, this is what I want to do. And then I found out that I was out of a job like the next day. And so I decided to make the leap then to start my own firm because I was really seeing these early stage startups and the early stage startup founders really struggling with kind of scrappy but still sustainable growth strategy.
Yeah, that makes so much sense. And sadly to say too, I started a lot of what I do now because I was laid off. I actually took a job that I thought was going to be a great job, and I ended up getting laid off, and I took another job and I actually was about to get laid off from it. So I know that pain, unfortunately, far too well, but I think a lot of times those situations and things can kind of direct us into where we're hoping to be.
Oh, yeah, without a doubt. And actually, I've been talking to a couple of mentors about the huge boom in entrepreneurship and startups during the 2008 economic crisis.
Mm-hmm.
And we're already seeing tons of people starting side hustles and, small businesses because they've been laid off during this COVID pandemic. And so, that's not to say that things aren't really, really hard right now, but I think we are going to see a lot of creativity and a lot of innovation and a lot of new CEOs kind of on the rise over the next year. And I'm excited to see us recover and come out of this better than we went in, hopefully, fingers crossed.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's so funny you said that is because I think when I started to read a lot about, I didn't know exactly what entrepreneurship was, but I started to read a lot about it. And that was one of the most surprising things that came up for me is that you read that a lot of the Fortune 500 companies were actually started during economic downturns. And it's kind of mind blowing to think of as you spoke about the creativity, the opportunity that presents itself when there's kind of these downturns or these crashes where it seems like it's all doom and gloom and definitely as difficult as you spoke to, but it's definitely some opportunity that's within that.
Absolutely. And I think it's a little too early to tell, but I just have this feeling like in another year or two, we're going to see some big shifts in what entrepreneurship looks like in America. And I'm excited to see it, and I'm excited to kind of be a part of that and hopefully help cultivate and foster some of these new leaders and these new companies.
Yeah, absolutely. It'll definitely be, I think too. So I'm a little biased, of course, too, but I'm excited as well to kind of see what comes, from all of this. So I know we spoke a little bit when I read your bio, and you did as well too. Could you take us through how you work with your clients in different ways that you connect with them?
Yeah, and so we started as a startup growth strategy firm, and over the years, what I've really recognized where there's a huge opportunity that I see a ton of startup founders and especially underrepresented founders, especially women, especially people of color, we have a tendency to be the sort of people that put our head down, we work really hard, and we just like hope someone will notice.
Mm.
And so a lot of the work we started to do as part of this more kind of company-wide growth strategy was helping the leaders of the company build authentic personal brands that actually helped them grow their business. And that's really where we focus now. And we really specialize in what we refer to as aggressively humble business professionals. So the ones that, resist the urge to brag or to talk about themselves, but they're doing really, really impressive things. And so I work with them on helping them kind of find their voice, and really put themselves out there and do it in a way that has an impact on their community, but really helps them accelerate the growth of their business.
That's absolutely powerful. And I don't know if you find this when you work with your clients, that those ones that are aggressively humble, as you said, sometimes are really, really great at what they do.
Yeah,
And they're so kind of hesitant, maybe for, maybe a myriad of reasons, to kind of stand on the mountain and say, hey, look what I've done. And I think that it helps to have somebody who recognizes that and sees that, but also knows how exactly to make that happen so that, those goals can be accomplished.
absolutely. And I think, here's the deal. The one thing I talk about a ton is this like mindset shift.
Mhm.
So the number one sort of objection I get from those aggressively humble leaders where they're like, oh, well, I don't want to brag. And I say, okay, go look at like the social media profiles of people you really admire and that you follow. Do any of them get up there and just be like, I'm so great, I'm so awesome, look at what I did? No, they don't. Like none of them do that. And the idea actually is not bragging, it's sharing.
Mhm.
So thinking through like, what are the things you learned? What are the things you tested and the things you tried, and what are you thinking about, right? So it's about sharing and sharing your journey and your experience and the lessons you've learned along the way. It's not about going on and on about how awesome you are. No one wants to follow that. No one wants to pay attention to that. And when you think about it that way, all of a sudden it becomes so much easier, because it feels a whole lot less icky.
Right. And probably definitely in alignment as well, too, as I imagine that a lot of people are kind of looking on how best to do that. And especially, I love the aspect of really being able to kind of just show what you're doing. Because I think so many times when we build and grow things or create things, I should even say, we're doing it to be of service. And it's kind
Yeah,
of a disservice when we don't share that to the world, to
absolutely.
the community that we want to connect with and want to support and grow.
Yeah. And part of the sort of inspiration for all of this is I'm based in Portland, Oregon.
Mhm.
And most of the leaders of the startup community in Portland, we all kind of joke with each other that like we are a city of aggressively humble people. And it's actually really hampered our growth as a startup community, because unless you live in the city or unless you happen to use one of the products that is built here, you don't know how incredibly vibrant the startup community really is in Portland, because we don't talk about it. And so it's like over the last couple of years, I've had this like ongoing conversation with startup leaders about this blocker that we're all kind of facing as a community, and how can we cultivate this kind of storytelling in a way that serves all of us and helps us have a bigger impact. If no one knows what you're doing, it's the whole, if the tree falls in the forest and no one's around to hear it, doesn't make a sound, right? If
Right.
you do amazing things and no one has any clue that you're doing it, doesn't matter.
Right. Yeah, and that really gets down to, as you said, really knowing why you're doing what you're doing. Because again,
Yeah,
we create these things, we develop these things in order to make that impact. But if we don't make that mindset shift that you talked about to really take it to, I guess, the next level, which
yep,
is often the case, then are we really making the impact we initially desired to do? So we have to get past that. And I appreciate you for helping, so many entrepreneurs and startups to get past that as well. So,
thank you.
I wanted to ask you for what I call your
Yeah,
secret sauce. And
yeah.
this could be you personally or your business or your organization, but what do you feel kind of sets you apart and makes you unique?
So there's a few things. One of the things that I think really does set me apart from when when it comes to growth strategy, a lot of the folks on the growth strategy side of things, they are marketers. I started my career in sales, and that means I apply a lot of the kind of scrappy sales methodology to the work that I do, right? So one of the things that, we've always done differently, and we even do this when it comes to this kind of thought leadership, kind of growth and expansion work that we do is, okay, when you think about marketing, right, it's like you put something out there and someone's going to find it, or you're going to deliver an ad to them and they'll find it, and you just like wait for them to come in. Sales doesn't work that way, right? In sales, we go out and we're hunters. We go find the people that we want to connect with our product, that we want to sell to, and we find them and we engage them. And when it comes to startups, way too often startups are trying to run marketing or run growth or run how they build themselves as thought leaders the way you would if you were like an enterprise brand. And guess what? It does not work. It's not the like, we put out awesome things and like fingers crossed someone finds it. The world is a very, very noisy place. So a lot of what we do is really helping our clients understand exactly who they want to know who they are, right? Like who do they want to connect to? Who do they serve? All of that. And then finding them where they are, finding them, getting in front of them, engaging them in a really personal way. And so we call it relationship building at scale. And so how can you do something that feels one-to-one, but is really one-to-many? And that's kind of the fuel we use to accelerate this growth, both from a thought leadership standpoint, right? It's not just like putting stuff out on social media, but it's going and sending someone a direct message and being like, hey, I like what you're doing. I'm doing this thing. I think you might be interested. What do you think? And like actually engaging and creating meaningful relationships and building communities around it.
Yeah, that makes so much sense. And it's extremely powerful because I think so many times, as you kind of spoke to, what I heard is that we often are kind of putting things out there and creating it and waiting for people to kind of come through the door, which is sometimes what happens with marketing. But really with those sales kind of tactics and strategies and methodology, you get the opportunity to really, as you said, hunt, to really get to be and find out where your target market is and be there and reach out to them, engage with them. And it's a lot more active. So to me, it sounds like it also gives you that greater opportunity to succeed because you're not just hoping, you're actually creating that hope, so to speak, so that you see that come through the door.
Yeah, it's taking more control in the process.
Yes, absolutely. No, I love that. So I wanted to switch gears a little bit, and I wanted to ask you for what I call a CEO hack. So this could be an app, a book, or a habit that you have, but what's something that makes you more effective and efficient?
Yeah. So number one, and this is not the most original, but it is everything to me, is read more. Read more. And if you struggle to read like physical books, then listen to audiobooks. Listen to them at 1.25 speed or 1.5 speed, but read more. And it is, to me, it's one of those things, it's the compound effect. Like, no, you read two books over the next month. It's not going to change everything for you. But in a year, all of a sudden you're going to realize you have way more creative ideas. You have really smart things to say in meetings with customers and clients. You never run out of potential content ideas, and you are just always getting better. And it's also a lot more fun. And I think also one of the things I've realized during the whole COVID thing, and especially we're recording this in June, all the protests going on, sometimes you need an escape. So also reading fiction that, I don't know, sparks your imagination and makes you learn about, fascinating people and fascinating times. It can really help you wind down at the end of the night and sleep a little bit better and, I don't know, feel a little more inspired, which we could always use a little more of.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that one of the biggest things, especially, from startups and entrepreneurs that are listening to this too, we spoke about the creative solutions to a lot of problems that we were talking about from a business standpoint. But I think obviously we're seeing a lot of stuff in the world when we're recording this as well too, that's coming to light. Yeah. And I think when you sometimes think or read things or listen to things that are outside of the norm that can inspire those creative solutions to problems that we see going on today, whether it be business or in the world that we live in.
Oh yeah. I've noticed a trend for me. I'll read something before bed. I'll go to sleep. The next morning when I'm taking a shower, I will have an idea that is related to what I read before. And I'll be like, oh my God, this is how I apply that. Or, oh my God, I need to do this thing. And so there's this like, I don't know, it's the evolution of the idea in your own brain. And it can be a really inspiring, kind of amazing thing to experience.
Yeah, and it's very, very powerful to kind of pay attention to that too,
Yeah.
because it's so funny because you sometimes don't realize the things that you're putting into your mind or obviously your body in so many different ways, but the things you listen to before you go to sleep, your subconscious, I'm not a doctor or anything, but your subconscious minds, I think, continues to kind of think about those things, and it develops and manifests itself in those solutions that you talked about when you wake up.
Absolutely. And I think also, when we get on a negative mindset, negative spiral, reading a really positive book can just shift everything for us. And so I think it also takes a little bit of self-awareness to recognize, like, what do I need? What is missing from my psyche? And then going out and finding the influences that are going to help you cultivate the mindset, cultivate the kind of attitude that is going to help you.
Right. That makes so much sense. So I wanted to ask you now for what I
Yeah.
call a CEO nugget. So that could be a word of wisdom or piece of advice. It might be around sales, or it might be something you would tell a client, or if you hopped into a time machine, maybe even your younger business self.
Yeah. So I've been saying this a lot lately. Everyone has a personal brand. I talk to a lot of founders that are like, oh, my personal brand doesn't matter. It's my business brand. Here's the deal. I hate Jeff Bezos and what he stands for, but he's got a great quote. Your personal brand is what people say about you when you're not in the room.
Mm.
And you have a personal brand. The question is, have you applied any intention? And you have the ability to really think through, what do you want people to say about you? I think a lot also about the Maya Angelou quote, also going to butcher this. You don't remember what people don't remember what you said or what you did. They remember how you made them feel. So how do you want to make people feel? And if you apply intention into that, it's going to help you create a personal brand and create a kind of impact in your community and in your industry and in your world that you can be proud of and that can help you in your business. And so take the time to actually do the work and think about what, the kind of impact you want to have, because you're going to have some impact. You better decide what you want it to be.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I love that. And especially that intentionality piece is, something that's been, coming up when we've been talking. Is just, you have the ability and power to be able to, I don't know if I want to say control that, but at least to manage that to some degree. And I think that,
Yeah.
as you said, if you don't think you have a personal brand, you do. We all do. And those things that people think about you or know you for when you're not in the room is part of your brand. And to be aware of that and make sure that's in alignment and congruent with what we hope to accomplish and do.
Absolutely.
Awesome, awesome, awesome. So now I wanted to ask you my absolute favorite question, which is the definition of what it means to be a CEO. And I know we touched on this about the changing of the entrepreneurship and the idea of what that means, but could you take us through what you and how you would define what being a CEO means to you, Kasey?
So I think it really means charting your own path. And that's a complex sort of concept, but it means deciding what you want your life to be about. And again, deciding what kind of impact you want to have. Who do you want to be? What kind of legacy do you want to create in your life? How do you want to affect people? And it's something that is really important. I think all too often we talk about being a CEO as making lots of money. And it's like, okay, that's great if that's the only thing you care about. Actually, I don't think that's great, but that's fine if that's the only thing you care about. But it's about deciding what you want your life to be about and how you want to impact people. And there's something about that title that makes people take it more seriously. And, I know that when you're starting your own business, there's this like reluctance to call yourself a CEO when your business is just you. Or even when your business is just small, you're like, oh, it's too much. But here's the deal. There's something about giving yourself that serious, hefty title that makes you take it a little bit more seriously. It makes you really own the kind of power and influence and impact that comes with it. And there's something potentially really beautiful about that if you embrace it and you own it and kind of step into your power.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I love that. And I definitely, respect that definition, because so many times we can kind of shy from the roles that we have or the impact that we have in our life and in our worlds and our societies. And I think, as you said, is when you really own that, it's not so much the title as what it represents and what it can mean as far as the impact that we have to our businesses, the people that are working with us, around us, partners, so on and so forth. And I think when we step into that, as you said, it really I think it really increases sometimes the effort and the products and the services that we put out, the impact that we have, because we understand the true impact of everything that we're doing, and we're a lot more intentional about how we do that.
Yeah. Yeah. All comes down to intention.
Absolutely. Well, Kasey, truly appreciate that and appreciate your time even more. What I wanted to do was pass you the mic, so to speak, just to see if there's anything additional you can let our readers and listeners know, and of course, how best they can get a hold of you, subscribe to your podcast, and find out about all about some things you're working on.
Yeah. So number one thing is, if you are an entrepreneur or dreaming of being an entrepreneur, I know today is also the time of the side hustle. Come find me at Our Galaxy. So ourgalaxy.co. And we're building a private Slack community that is all about helping people build, grow as thought leaders, find their voice and kind of get out there. And so everything from helping you pitch yourself to podcast to get interviews with amazing people like Gresh, but also starting your own podcast, getting more active on social media, leveraging LinkedIn, all of the things that kind of go with it. So I'm just super passionate about helping as many people as I possibly can kind of go down this path. So go to ourgalaxy.co and take advantage of a ton of the resources that we have. Join the communities, join the conversation, so we can all kind of learn and grow together, because it turns out growing is like easier and a whole lot more fun when you're doing it with other people that are kind of on the same journey, same sort of hustle with you.
Absolutely, yes. And it's so funny. I have this equation where I say visibility plus resources equals success, and to have accessibility to those resources is absolutely huge. So I appreciate you for bringing that together with the community piece, along with those resources that are extremely valuable for everybody to take advantage of. So truly appreciate that, Kasey, and I hope you have a phenomenal rest of the day.
Thank you. You too.
All right, and I'll cut it off here. Hello, hello, hello. Again, this is Gresh from the I Am CEO podcast, and we just had a phenomenal interview with Kasey Jones of A Better Jones in Our Galaxy. Kasey's doing so many phenomenal things, and I wanted to bring her back on because we talked so much about all the awesome things that she's providing for entrepreneurs and business owners. So Kasey, I wanted to pass you the mic so you can tell us a little bit more about what you do and how you make an impact in our world.
Thank you, Gresh. So what I do, I am a thought leadership coach and growth strategist for aggressively humble business professionals, and especially entrepreneurs and startup founders. And so I help them find their voice, cultivate their confidence, and really evolve and grow as thought leaders in their industry, and do it in a way that helps them actually grow their business or develop their careers.
That makes a lot of sense. And it's something that's obviously, extremely timely, during this time. And I think we talked a little bit about that and touched on it kind of from a personal branding standpoint on how it's important, how we all have a personal brand. But I think because of everything that's going on, I wanted to kind of hear a little bit more from you on how is or might be the best way to kind of approach a lot of things that are happening in this world.
Yeah. So, we're recording this in early June, and the United States is like literally on fire, and there's protests in every single state. And I've been having a lot of conversations with leaders who are supportive of what's going on, but are really struggling to figure out what is appropriate for them to say. Should they be a part of the conversation, particularly if they're white? Does it make sense for them to kind of join the conversation or add their 2 cents? They don't want to appear like they're, taking the mic away from the people that really deserve it right now. And one of the things that I keep thinking about is, frankly, it's a quote from Robert F. Kennedy. And he was giving a speech against apartheid in South Africa in the 60s. So what, that's like, I don't know, 20 something years before apartheid ended. So, and I pulled it up so that I wouldn't butcher it and that I could actually read it. So bear with me for a second. So he says, "It is from numberless diverse acts of courage and belief that human history is shaped each time a person stands up for an ideal or acts to improve the lot of others or strikes out against injustice. They send forth a tiny ripple of hope, and crossing each other from a million different centers of energy and daring, those ripples build a current that can sweep down the mightiest wall of oppression and resistance." And here's the deal. No, you're not going to change the world with like one tweet that you decide to make, okay? Or one thing that you do. But the more we can speak out against what we wholeheartedly disagree with and speak for the movement that we really stand with and support, all of those voices, those individual tweets, those single Facebook messages, whatever they are, they all combine to really add momentum to a movement. And so what I constantly kind of tell leaders is like, especially those that are, humble and really struggle with putting themselves out there in a public way, there's this belief that like, you've got to write the tweet that is going to like change everything and is going to go viral and like, oh, no. That's not how it works. It's about small, consistent actions that build up over time. And right now, it's about small, consistent actions coming from literally every single corner of the country that are converging. And that is why this feels like this unstoppable wave of change and movement. And so don't put so much darn pressure on yourself. You don't have to come up with the perfect like blog post or social media message to like change everything. No, it's you doing one thing that lets others know where you stand, that sends out a voice of support for the communities that you believe in and you want to kind of send love and energy to. And we're only going to get through this together. So join. Don't be afraid to do that.
Absolutely. No, that's extremely, powerful. And I think so many times when we think about leaders, we're thinking about people in, high offices or, maybe have boatloads of money or whatever that might look like.
Yeah.
But I think we forget sometimes the impact that we can make as being leaders in our world, as being leaders to the people around us. And as we kind of even talked about, when we define, what being a CEO means, so many times that we don't realize the intentionality of our actions, or sometimes even lack of actions, can create that ripple effect. And I think I appreciate you for, talking, obviously during the interview, but also obviously for this as well too, on helping us to understand the power that we have, especially in this day and age when we have so many tools at our disposal right in our smartphones, to be able to write a tweet, to be able to create a quick video, just to basically create that movement that doesn't make the wall fall tremendously for everybody, but it creates those small dents. It creates that movement and that energy that you kind of spoke to, where we can hopefully see the world that we always wanted to see.
Yeah. And let me give you a caveat.
Mm-hmm.
If you're putting out the tweet, but you're not actually doing the work in your day to day, don't do that. Okay. So as a CEO, you have the ability to impact everybody that works for you, every customer or client that you serve. You have some real impact and some real influence. And so you've got to apply it in the right way. So yes, put out the tweet, give your voice of support, but also look at your organization and like, how are your hiring practices? How inclusive is your organization? One of the things that I think we've seen quite a bit of is like, all of a sudden there's there's business leaders that are joining the conversation and saying, yeah, we support, Black Lives Matter. But then you look at their executive team and it's like all white men and, and all of these things. And so it's, look, you've got to walk the walk also. But use this as an opportunity to self-reflect. And this is, one thing, Gresh, we were talking before you hit record, like now is an amazing time for self-reflection and to really look at like, who am I? What am I about? Like, what really matters to me? Our world is in a crazy upheaval between pandemic and protests and so many things. Now is an amazing time to really look at, what do I stand for on a daily basis? Like, what kind of impact do I want to have, and what kind of impact am I having? And we have this opportunity to self-reflect and to make some very personal adjustments so that we can evolve through this period. And I am someone that's a big believer in what is known as the adversity quotient, right? It's like, how much can you learn from the hard stuff? My biggest periods of progress and growth have come right after my absolute like soul crushing losses and failures. I don't know why I'm laughing at that. But like, and look, we were talking about that with the economic downturn in 2008. We saw this like huge increase in entrepreneurship and startups, which is amazing. And I'm hoping that happens again, but we don't have to just think about it on a national or global scale. We can look at it as ourselves and our companies as well. What kinds of changes can we make where we're laying the ground for big progress and big growth?
Absolutely. Yeah. One quote I always go back to, and anytime, going through the frustrations, it's always great to be able to laugh at those frustrations now because you're able to kind of get through them. But I always say it's always darkest before dawn.
Yeah.
And what that means to me, and I hope by the person that actually wrote it as well too, is that those dark moments, if we continue to kind of go through them, to fight through them, to get through them, there's dawn that approaches. And it may not seem like that when we're in it, but it is very hopeful to know that with, actual actions, we talked about creating, how creating is so and powerful because it gives you that opportunity from your gifts to be able to impact the change in the way that I think are God-given gifts in order to make that happen. And I think when you kind of look at things through that perspective and through that way, you know that not just the tweet, but also the work behind the tweet is really what moves things forward. And it's like one of those big things that comes up a lot in business where a lot of times they'll say, if you have a really great idea, that's a great thing, but it's really going to be the execution of that idea that really gets it to where it needs to be. And I think when we're looking at a lot of the things that are happening in this world, it's not just the tweet, but it's the action that go with the tweets that in alignment make things happen.
Yeah, and I totally agree. And one of the things that I've been talking more and more with some friends about is if you don't know how to process what's going on and you don't know what you need to do, there are so many incredible books. There's so many resources where you can learn. And, I realized about a year and a half ago that I was less publicly vocal about supporting Black and brown communities than I wanted to be. And I realized it was because I was really, really, really afraid of saying the wrong thing and pissing people off. And I'm actually pretty used to kind of pissing people off, but pissing people off that I really cared about and wanted to be supporting. And so I started just reading a ton of books, and I started, reading books both from personal perspectives, also nonfiction, also novels about the experience of being Black in America. And it really, don't get me wrong, I have no clue. I'm a very privileged white woman. But it really helped me have a better understanding of the situation, a lot more empathy, a lot more facts and figures about it, which is super helpful, and also have more language around it. So if there's something that like you recognize that you care about a thing and you're noticing that you are reticent to talk about it, I guarantee it's because you're afraid. And I guarantee that going down a path of self-education will make it easier. It takes time, but I promise it will make it easier, and it'll make you feel, I don't know, more compassionate and more connected to the issue that you're kind of grappling with.
Right. That makes so much sense. I appreciate you for bringing that up. And I think that's, of course, something that came up, during the interview as well, too. And I think what I've seen more than anything else is that empathy piece is missing from a lot of people's comments, the things that they say. And I think that, as you said, one of the actions that you can take in order to not necessarily be that person or understand from a Black and brown community, but just get a better perspective on what pain, frustration, anger, whatever those emotions might be, is a lot of times to pick up a book, is to listen to an audiobook. There's so much information out there. And if we're interested in it, those are actions we can take to see the world from a different perspective, which I think can create that empathy that hopefully makes the world a better place.
Yeah, absolutely.
Awesome. Well, Kasey, truly appreciate your time and all the awesome things that you're doing. What I wanted to do was pass you the mic again, just so that you can let people know how best they can get a hold of you, subscribe to your podcast, and find out about all the awesome things you're working on.
Absolutely. So what I'm really recommending is go to ourgalaxy.co. This is the community, the resource, the platform that's all about helping aggressively humble business professionals build themselves as thought leaders. And there's tons of ways to kind of get connected, and there's tons of resources. And that's where you can join our private Slack community, and you can meet other people that are kind of on this journey.
Awesome. And again, we will have the links and information in the show notes for that as well, so that people can follow up with you. But thank you so much again for your time and all the awesome work that you're doing. And I hope you have a phenomenal rest of the day.
Thank you, Grish. You too.